الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the fiqh subject, and last time we talked about adab al-istinja, or the last thing was adab al-istinja wal-istijmar, and continuing inshallah ta'ala with the next chapter, which is Sunan al-Fitra. Sunan al-Fitra. And Sunan al-Fitra, in the English part with the book you have, which is again we're going through the book of Al-Fiqh al-Muyassar, or Risalatun fi Fiqh al-Muyassar, Fiqh made easy. The title of it is the acts corresponding to the nature of humans. Sunan al-Fitra. Sunan is the plural of sunnah, and sunnah means the way. Like Sunnatun Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the way of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And al-Fitra basically comes from the initial or the original being or status of things. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فاطر السماوات والأرض. He's the initiator of the heavens and the earth. And that's different than خالق السماوات والأرض. Al-Khaliq is the creator. And فاطر السماوات والأرض is also the creator of the heavens and the earth, but gives the meaning of initiating it, give the focus more on initiating something, the actual initiation of things. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Badi'u samawati wal ard. That means He initiated it, created the heavens and the earth without a previous example, without anything, from nothing. So Al-Fitra is basically the natural way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human beings, the actions that the human beings need to be upon to keep their pure nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them with, and it deals with the physical actions or the physical things. So this is what it's called Sunan al-Fitra, and that's why he defines it as al-Fitra هي السنة القويمة والخلقة المبتدأة. As-Sunnah, the way al-Qawima, the upright, the straightforward, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. وَالْخِلْقَ الْمُبْتَدِيَةِ, and the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it was initiated, the way that it's initiated. And as been previously mentioned all the time, Adam alayhi salam was a perfect creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created him for. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to worship Him alone, and He gave us the ability to choose whether to be good or evil. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Adam alayhi salam what it needs to fulfill this, and also the way that he would live on the face of earth physically, and matters of inward actions and things like this. So the sons of Adam, from Adam alayhi salam, they went from one generation to the other. There is no difference, meaning human beings are the same human beings. So this is a meaning that we need to always remember. There's nothing different, nothing new in humanity. It's the same human being, the same way of thinking, the same everything. So human beings are not more sophisticated now than they were at the time of Adam alayhi salam or after Adam alayhi salam. They're the same human beings. When it comes to the haqq and the batil, the truth and falsehood, belief and disbelief, intellectually and so on and so forth. So al-Fitra is to bring back the human beings the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them. And as he says, وَالْفِطْرَةِ هِيَ مَا يَجِبُ أَنْ يَكُونَ عَلَيْهِ الْإِنسَانُ فِي حَيَاتِهِ. And the fitra, the pure nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us with, it what the human being should be upon in his lifetime. And you see how the ways of the shaitan on the face of earth is to take people away from the fitra, to take away from the nature way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us with, to tamper with this, to distort them, so that once the fitra is mankusa, becomes upright, becomes not upright, becomes inverted, right? That means a person is not able to see what is right and what is wrong anymore. He's like as if he's not human anymore. So that means he's not able to see and to think as a human being. So this is how it destroys one's religion. And one of the things that I want to go through this, and too much we're talking about fiqh perspective, but sins, and some sins If a person does not repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from it, and when humanity are upon it and it becomes apparent and widespread, these types of sins would invert this fitrah, would distort the fitrah of the human beings, and that to make them basically like the deputies of shaitan. But here, from the fiqh perspective, these actions, fiqh matters, that is from Sunan al-Fitrah, and this is clearly stated by the Prophet ﷺ as Sunan al-Fitrah, as it's a subject of Sunan al-Fitrah, and it's mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So here he says that min Sunan al-Fitrah, and we're being brief, we're not going to get into the details of the evidences of every one. We're just going through the matter so that we can try to finish the book, inshallah ta'ala, and understand every mas'ala. So the first one is as-siwak. As-siwak, using the siwak, وهو مسنون في كل وقت. That means it's recommended at all times. And as-siwak is, as we know, the oud, or the stick that a person would brush his teeth, to clean his mouth, to clean his teeth. And it's not just the teeth, it's the teeth and the tongue and the gum. All of that is to be cleaned. And the siwak is the tool to do this. It's the stick. So whether it's, as they say, the best of it, the best type of it, which the Prophet ﷺ used to use, is from the shajar, or the tree of al-arak, oud al-arak, which is the siwak that we know. But that doesn't mean that it's the only type of way that a person can brush his teeth or clean his mouth. Any stick. So as long as the mouth is clean. But of course, with the siwak, it's more of a reward specifically because the Prophet ﷺ used it, meaning the siwak from the oud al-arak, from the special tree which is al-arak. Using the siwak is masnoon kullu waqt. Masnoon, what's masnoon means? From the sunnah. So it's recommended, and it's from the sunnah. We have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is at all times. At all times it's from the sunnah. And it's matharatun lil-fam, mardatun lil-rabb, as the Prophet ﷺ said. It's purification for the mouth, purifies the mouth, and it's mardatun lil-rabb. It's something that pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the things, to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by using the siwak to clean one's mouth. Since at-tahara, or purification, is half of the iman. And there are other hadiths where the angels, they come closer to the person and they harmed by what human beings are harmed with. And that's why masnunun fi kulli waqt, it doesn't mean that when a person is alone, he allows himself to have a bad breath. Right? If you're alone, even, a person should, as part of the deen, is to also make sure that the mouth is clean. Even if a person is alone, no one is with him. As human beings, alhamdulillah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the ability that we can sustain our own self, and otherwise life becomes very difficult. But even that, we are commanded to clean ourselves even if you're alone. So it becomes more stressed if a person is with the people. And it's more stressed ويتأكد, so it's at all times sunnah. So when we talk about the siwak as from Sunan al-Fitrah, that means it's masnoonun kullu waqt. And all the prophets of Allah, they were upon this. And that's why also one of the meanings of Sunan al-Fitrah, that this is not something new in the last message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to humanity through the Prophet ﷺ. This is something that the messengers before were upon. And they would teach their people these Sunan al-Fitrah. So it's at all times masnoon, and ويتأكد, and it's more stressed. عند الوضوء. عند, the word عند means right by whatever is mentioned afterwards. So when it says عند الوضوء, and this is what the Prophet ﷺ used in the hadith, لولا أن أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل وضوء. And in the other hadith, عند كل صلاة. عند تعني المقاربة, means closeness. Does not mean an hour before wudu. It means by the wudu, right when you about to make the wudu. The first or the last thing that before you wash your hands is the siwak. So this is in wudu, was salah, and the same thing with the salah, just before the salah. And this is the most virtue of all actions when a person is making salah. So that means a person should be in state of tahara, and one of which is the mouth is clean. وقراءة القرآن, and when reciting the Quran, speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be recited when a person is use the siwak then. And that's again, if you're alone and you woke up from your sleep and use the Prophet ﷺ used to use the siwak, as it's also mentioned here, عند الاستيقاظ من النوم. Once you wake up from sleep. So وقراءة القرآن ودخول المسجد, when entering the masjid, والمنزل, when entering the home, which is one of the sunan that is deserted by many. You know, how many remember that when you step into your house, the first thing you use is the siwak. The Prophet ﷺ used to do that. Why? خيركم خيركم لأهلي وأنا خيركم لأهلي. The best among you are the best to their families, and I'm the best to my family. So it's not just when a person goes out, when he sees others, those who have more rights upon a person more than anyone else are one's family. So, and it becomes the opposite. Those who sees the worst of us are our families. And that's why more action needs to be done when it comes to observing ourselves with our families, because because it's the norm is they see everything from one's actions. So that means it's to be stressed even more. So والمنزل وعند دخول المنزل وعند الاستيقاظ من النوم, and when waking up from sleep, as the Prophet ﷺ, he would do that the first thing. Then when he wakes up from sleep, of course, with the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and وعند تغير رائحة الفم, and when the smell of the mouth changes. So anytime the mouth smell changes, then a person, it's recommended, it's from the sunnah to use the siwak. So how many places here we're stressed? Al-wudu, as-Salah, قراءة القرآن, دخول المسجد, entering the masjid, al-manzil, entering the house, when waking up from sleep, and when the smell of the mouth changes. 7 places where it's stressed to use the siwak. We have to memorize them. And if we memorize them and practice them, we would never forget them. And if we forget them, that means we're not practicing them. So, for example, if this question comes in the exam and someone misses it, that misses one, that means he's not doing it. So it's to apply the ilm that we learn, that we should try our best, inshallah ta'ala, in this week, that these 7 places or 7 situations that we would use the siwak. And if we use them in these 7 places, 7 times, 7 situations, and of course we won't forget them. It's like you're forgetting the 5 daily salah, what they're called. So wudu, salah, reciting the Quran, entering the masjid, entering the house, when waking up from sleep, and when the mouth smell changes. And before that, mastunun kullu waqt is recommended. It's from the sunnah at all times. Even if the person doesn't smell bad, if he uses the siwak, mashallah, is good. This is the first one of Sunan al-Fitra al-Siwak. The second one is حلق العانة, حلق العانة, ونتف الإبط, وقص الأظافر, وغسل البراجم. They are mentioned together here, which is حلق العانة. حلق is shaving, so shaving the pubic hair. ونتف الإبط, which is plucking the underarm hair. And قص الأظافر, and قص is to cut, or the trimming, the nails of the finger and the toes. وغسل البراجم, and washing. البراجم is مفاصل الأصابع, is the joints, English, finger joints and knuckles. So when a person is making wudu, that he would do the forelock, whatever one, he would get his hands, his fingers like this to make sure that between the fingers and the knuckles are washed, because it carries dirt or things of that nature. So this is also part of Sunan al-Fitra, and this is to be done while making wudu. And the Prophet ﷺ waqat, as the hadith of Anas radiallahu anhu, that he gave the people time, they cannot go beyond this time to do these acts of Sunan al-Fitr. 40 days. You cannot go beyond 40 days. And if it's done on a weekly basis, this is better. Whether it's the day of Jum'ah, when a person is taking the ghusl al-Jum'ah or whatever, because the day of Jum'ah is stressed when it comes to matters of cleanliness, the weekly cleaning, or any time. Of course, sometimes a person might be, these things grow faster than others and so on. So shaving the pubic hair, natful ibd, plucking the underarm hair, And as the ulama, they say, if someone is not able to, which is, it's supposed to be feasible since this is from Sunan al-Fitra, but if someone is not able to, at least to remove it, whether it's with the shaving, it's not the same, of course, but at least to remove the hair. So if a person is not able to plug the underarm hair, shave it. So this is better than leaving it, of course, the way it is. And قص الأظافر, and to cut the nails. And that's for both men and women, by the way. So there's no special ruling for women that they can have long nails. And, they become vicious sometimes. So it's from the sunnah to cut the nails, right? Whether it's for men or women. And someone might ask about the fake nails, especially for women, they put fake nails. It's from sunnah al-fitra to cut the nails. So there's no need for them to show or to make them to have fake nails. It's the same thing, and we don't fake things, and it's just a matter of getting used to things. And we have to be different, and that's cleaner, and beauty can be done in a different way. وغسل البراجم, again, to wash what's between the fingers. And that's also in the toes, and it's part of the wudu. When you wash your feet, is to go between the toes to make sure that this is also rubbed with one's finger, or making sure at least the water gets in there. So this is number 2, حلق العانة, shaving the pubic hair, نتف الإبط, the underarm, and قص الأظافر, cutting the nails, وغسل البراجم, and between the fingers. Number 3, قص الشارب وإعفاء اللحية وتوفيرها. قص الشارب meaning cutting the mustache, which is above the lips, وإعفاء اللحية, and to let the beard grow. وتوفيرها, توفيرها, that means you let it thick, let it go, leave it the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it. And sunan al-fitra, some of it is in the category of what's mustahab, and some of the parts of it is wajib and mandatory, and one of which is i'fa'u al-lihy. So growing the beard is an obligation upon men to leave their beards the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them with, and not to tamper with it, to leave it the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them with, and as long as it doesn't become too long. And we have in the Prophet ﷺ the best example. In the Prophet ﷺ, كان كث اللحية, that means his beard was big, ﷺ. But if someone, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, did not decree for him to have a big beard, he should not do anything to put a fake beard, for example. It's just to leave it the way it is, without cutting, without shaving. And shaving is haram, of course. Shaving the beard is haram. And cutting the beard, this is where the issue of, it's not mentioned here, because the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, all the words of the hadith about the beard, even though everybody had beard at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was not known to humanity even at that time, except the Persians. And the Prophet ﷺ was addressing the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and they're all with beards. It's like when, say for example, someone is saying now to the people, I'm not sure what, like everybody's doing something, that it's not a strange thing not to do it, right? Like for example, socks are not haram, or something natural to be, something that people don't even, not even thinking that they would do something opposite than that. And still the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أعفوا اللحى وأعفوا الشوارب. And those who said that, he said that because of the mustache, because then he said, خالفوا اليهود والنصارى, خالفوا أهل الكتاب, be different, خالفوا المشركين, which was for the mustache. The mustache is to be different than them, yes. But what he could have said, عليه الصلاة والسلام, احفوا الشوارب. That's it. Just cut the mustache, make a line, make sure that doesn't go into your mouth. And that's sufficient. But what would he say? وفروا اللحى. وفروا them from التوفير. التوفير is when you let something to be in abundance. And the other word is أرخوا اللحى. Al-irkha is when you put a curtain down to cover something. So that means let things down. So let your beard go down. So وفروا, أرخوا, أعفوا. الإعفاء is to leave it, right? To not to do anything to it. أطلقوا اللحى. Also the Prophet ﷺ said, أطلق الإطلاق, that means, when you have something like you أطلقت الخيل مثلا, that means you had a horse and you let it go. So leave it alone, let it go. Right? So these are the words, or أفعال الأمر, or the words of command of the Prophet ﷺ when it comes to the beard. So this is a mandatory thing for men to grow their beards and to leave it the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them with. And even the Prophet ﷺ, when the messenger from Persia came to him and they used to make their mustaches big and they would shave their beards, and the Prophet ﷺ, and this is a sound, authentic narration, Sunan Darimi and others, where the Prophet ﷺ could not look at the face of that person. This is mutilation. He turned his face away and he said, Man amaraka bihada? Who ordered you to do this? Strange thing, especially if someone never seen this before, or it's something that looks very strange. So he said, Rabbuna, or their Lord, or their leader. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Inna Allah amarani bi'ifā' al-liha wa ihfā' al-shawari. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded me to grow the beard and to trim the mustache. So that's why this is a mas'ala. There's no differences of opinions in its obligation. The four madhahib are upon the tahrim, or forbidden for people to shave their beards. The issue of how tall and long and things like this, there's the action of Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma that people do it very tightly, which is something that he would do radiallahu anhuma, and he was known to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ very strictly, of course. He would cut what's more than the fist, al-qabda, like you put like this, your beard on your beard, your fist. He would cut what's more than the fist in Hajj and Umrah, not the whole year, in Hajj and Umrah. When he goes to make ihram, he would do this, and the fist of Ibn Umar. So so it's not here but there, right? So this is the minimum, as mentioned in some of the opinions, and no one said less than that from the mu'tabar, from what's valid of opinions, inshallah. So this is the subject. I'm talking too much, even though it just says the mas'ala here that's from Sunan al-Fiqh. Number 4, إكرام شعر الرأس ودهنه وتسريحه. From the Sunan al-Fitra is to ikram, is to honor, is to take care of the hair of the head. If you have hair, take care of your hair. ودهني, then you put دهن on it, cream, وتسريحه, and to calm your hair. So this is part of Sunan al-Fitra, even though the Prophet ﷺ used to commend the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Actually, he would كان ينهاهم عن الترفه. He would forbid them of الترفه, which is to be always not luxuriously, or having a luxurious life, because the word الترف is used nowadays for luxury, but it means to be always particular and making sure that everything is perfect and everything is 100% the way it's supposed to be when it comes to one's look. So a person has to have his hair perfect and his clothing is perfect and things like this. So this is where he would forbid them from this. And that's why, as a result of that, sometimes they would walk barefooted, so that they would be at ease. So if they don't find something to wear on their feet, they don't say, oh, I cannot do this. It's being basically spoiled too much with luxury and things like this. So, and the same thing when it comes to combing the hair, not to make sure that it's, once a hair goes out of place, you have to be at ease with it. Like a normal person, you comb your hair, mashallah, is good. If you have hair, comb it, take care of it, but don't be extreme, basically. ويكره القزع, and it's makruh or disliked, al-qaza', and this karaha, as the Prophet ﷺ, he forbade it, right? So it's the same as what's mentioned before, so it's not to be done. Al-qaza' is shaving part of the head and leaving the other part. So when a person shaves part of the head, this is called al-qaza'. They used to do it when someone is in state of grief, for example. They would make themselves look funny like that. And then, subhanAllah, when it becomes a fashion, people make themselves look funny. Allah give them hair, so either leave it or shave it, but don't, make these types of, weird stuff. So it's makruh. It's makruh, meaning that it's forbidden in that context, and which is how halqu بعض الرأس وترك بعضه لأنه يشوه الخلقة. I mentioned the wisdom behind it because it kind of a type of mutilation also. You know, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command us to be away from mutilating ourselves. Number 5, تغيير الشيب بالحناء والختم, which means to change the or to dye the hair or the gray hair with henna or katam, which is a type of like the henna type of herb where it covers, as it says, change the hair color. So this is the shape. Not when the hair is black, you dye it with something else. Or when the hair naturally is brown, you dye it with something else. But if it has gray, if you have gray hair, it's from the Sunan al-Fitra to dye the gray hair with any color except black, as the Prophet ﷺ said. So not to dye it with black, but to dye it with any other color. تغيير الشيب بالحناء والكتم. And someone always say, but some of the ulama, they don't, because it requires too much work. So sometimes it's not something that is there's the Prophet ﷺ, whether he did that or not, this is a debatable issue. So it's recommended, it's good, but it's not something that when you see a alim doesn't do it, it doesn't mean that he is having zuhd or less attracted to do good deeds or something like this. It's because of this matter. Number 6, التطيب بالمسك أو غيره. So you steam to have a good smell on with misk or the like of it, which is also from Sunan al-Fitra. It's a normal thing for human beings that they want to smell good. Number 7, al-khitan, which is circumcision. And then the details of it is mentioned. وهو قطع الجلد التي تغطي الحشفة لئلا يجتمع فيها الوسخ. والبول هذا بالنسبة للذكر, and it's known, the circumcision known for males, and it's also, as he says, khitan al-untha, for the females. And this has nothing to do with this mutilation that they talk about. This is completely different. That has nothing to do with this, what they talk about, female mutilation, whatever there is. Mutilation is forbidden in the deen of Islam. So they talk about something else. That's why circumcision, which is for the men, it's mandatory. For women, it's not. It's makruma, as he says. That means it's not mandatory. And the Prophet ﷺ specifically in the hadith mentioned specific things, which is, he said to Atiyya, la tunhiki, do not take too much. And it's a very specific method that, again, is nothing of what is being practiced even of some of the Muslims, which is mutilation to the women. This is completely different. Say completely different than what they claim. And if it's left, it's okay. So it's not something that is mandatory. Plus, a person should not harm himself or so in any way or form. So if it's banned, for example, in the place that he's in, he should not say, no, I have to do this and things like that. No, of course not, to stay away from it. But it's part of the deen, yes, no doubt. It's part of the deen, but people need, and it's required for them to study the matter a little bit more. They would see that it's one of the beauty of the deen of Islam. And as they used to forbid the circumcision for males before, and then they discovered that it's the same thing as for male. For if that considered not mutilation, it's the same thing, what exactly when it comes to the females, but we won't get into the details of that. So this is number 7 in Sunan al-Fitr. The next subject is al-wudu. So these are 7 Sunan al-Fitra that a person should acknowledge. As we said, some of it is mandatory and some of it is recommended, and it should be done, and people should be upon it at all times. The next subject, which is al-wudu, we'll just take the fadl al-wudu for now, inshallah, and then we'll continue, inshallah, next time with the conditions of the wudu. And just to be brief, inshallah. First of all, what is the meaning of the wudu? Al-wudu from al-wada'a. Al-wada'a is brightness. So this is what literally the word al-wudu comes from. But religiously, استعمال ماء طهور في الأعضاء الأربعة على صفة مخصوصة في الشرع. To use pure water, طهور. What's the ماء الطهور? What is the definitions of a ma' tahur? Can purify, is pure in itself and can purify others. And it's basically al-baqi ala asli khilqati, the water that is in its original form, not been changed. So you cannot say, if you define it, you cannot say استعمال الماء ماء طهور. That's the definition. في الأعضاء الأربعة. Definitions are always like law, very precise. في الأعضاء الأربعة, in the four organs, as mentioned in the ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah, because without that, without one of them, the wudu is not valid. على صفة مخصوصة, in a specific way, صفة, characteristics, or a specific way, في الشرع, according to the deen of Allah. So, and again, as mentioned before, how essential it is for us to learn, if we're studying fiqh, the meaning of the word linguistically and religiously. If a person doesn't know it linguistically, it's okay, right? But if he doesn't know it religiously, this is where the disasters happen. So when people think that they know the linguistic meanings of things, but they don't know how it's used in the Shara, then they would, be upon deviation. That's in many things, as we heard before, that people would become deviants as a result of not understanding what the words mean according to the Shara, according to the wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's a specific action and not just any type of purification. The fadl of the wudu, the virtue of the wudu, there are many, of course, hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He mentioned here one hadith, and we should remember the hadith, inshallah ta'ala, even though we'll see, inshallah ta'ala, the hadith that we have, we didn't explain. So that's why we'll just, he mentioned here the hadith. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, ما منكم من أحد يتوضأ فيسبغ الوضوء ثم يقول أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله إلا فتحت له أبواب الجنة الثمانية يدخل من أيها شاء. رواه مسلم. That no one of you يتوضأ, makes wudu, فيسبغ الوضوء, he perfects his wudu. Al-isbagh is to cover something completely. So that means every organ is covered with if it's washing, then it's washed. If it's wiped like this, in a perfect way, whether it's cold or hot. And then after the wudu says, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Unless if a person does this, the 8 gates of Jannah will be opened for him to enter from whatever gates he wish. This is a great reward for those who make wudu, and then after the wudu they would make this dhikr. وإسباغ الوضوء على الأعضاء من غير إسراف موجب لأهل أن يكونوا من الغر المحجلين يوم القيامة. قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن أمتي يدعون يوم القيامة محجلين من آثار الوضوء فمن استطاع منكم أن يطيل غرته فليفعل. That making the full wudu, making without excessiveness, because there's always a limit, right? You cannot go beyond it. And that's why we have to make a perfect wudu to the best of our ability. But if you do more, you are committing wrongdoing. So a person might think that he's doing good when he's actually harming himself. Because the Prophet ﷺ, when he said about washing the parts of the wudu more than 3 times, فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ وَطَغَى وَأَسْرَفَ, he wronged himself, he transgressed the limits, he did excessiveness. So it's not permissible to intentionally wash more than 3 times. That's the maximum. 1 is sufficient, 2 is sufficient, 3 is perfect. And that's not beyond that, unless a person is not sure or it's not, the water didn't reach. That's a different situation. But to always all the time think that this is better, no, it's not better. So, and whoever does this, even increase more than what the organ is, the Prophet ﷺ, that the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ would come in the day of judgment, as he said, ﷺ, غُرًّا مُحَجَّلِينَ, which means from the traces of the wudu, like the horses, first of all, because of the circumcisions, and because of the muhajjalin, the legs and the head, like the horses when it's brown or black, and that has whiteness in the forehead and in the foot. This is how the ummah will come, and that's why it will be spotted in the midst of all the nations. By what? By the athar of the wudu, by the traces of the wudu, which is an evidence, as the ulama, they say, whoever doesn't make wudu, he's not going to be part of the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ in the day of judgment, because there's no traces of the wudu on him in the day of judgment. Because of the time, inshallah, we'll stop here. But with the hadith that we're taking a hadith a day. First of all, the hadith that we just had it memorized, which is the hadith. Which one we didn't describe? We didn't explain. إن الماء طهور لا ينجسه شيء. Correct? This hadith we didn't explain, and the hadith basically says. إن الماء طهور لا ينجسه شيء. The water is pure, طهور means you can use for wudu. لا ينجسه شيء, nothing impurifies it. What does that mean? It means that if the water is pure, right? So it's pure, you can use it. لا ينجسه شيء, that means if there is najasa, there's something impure, and we did not mention the impurities yet, but if something impure falls into a water, right? If the water stays in its original form, it's pure. So nothing impurifies it if it's water. If it's clean water, that means it's pure. But if the najasa falls in it and it changes the water, changes the color of it, the smell of it, the taste of it, then the water is najas. The water is impure in this case. So that nobody would misunderstand what the hadith says. It doesn't mean that if you have a cup of water and you put in it urine, for example, or something like this, you say the water never becomes impure. No, this is not what it means. But if you have a container of water, or a big bucket of water, or something like this, and a drop of najasa falls in it, if it contaminates the water color changes, then this water is impure. It's not permissible to use. Color, smell, taste. And this is a debatable issue among the ulama when it comes to the minimum amount of water that is not to be contaminated. And the hadith of al-qullatayn, and some had talked about the authenticity of it and so on. So it has to be a big amount of water. So the difference is basically quickly in this is that if it's less than the qullatayn, which is a huge amount of water, like 500 or 600 pounds of water, even though it's volume. So if it's a big container of water, and if something falls in it and it didn't change anything in it, that means this water is clean, of course. It's very obvious, right? The issue, if it's less than this amount, if it's a glass of water like this, and something very small, tiny thing of impurity falls in it, according to one opinion, this is impure, you throw it away, because it's less than the qullatin, even if nothing changed in it. The other opinion is, according to this hadith, if nothing changed in the water, that means the water is pure, and nothing took it from being pure to impurity, because nothing changed. And this is what the opinion of many are upon, and this is the evidence that they use, and some have talked even about the authenticity of it. So this is brief, inshallah ta'ala. There is the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam that we need to memorize, inshallah. You ready? 61. As we're not going in order, right? So hadith 61. This is the hadith for today. It says عن حذيفة بن اليمان رضي الله عنهما قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تشربوا في آنية الذهب والفضة ولا تأكلوا في صحافها فإنها لهم في الدنيا ولكم في الآخرة متفق عليه. And we talked about that in the chapter of the utensils. لا تشربوا. And if you just memorize the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, that's sufficient. If you want to mention the narrator of the hadith, this is more, mashallah, beautiful. But it's not mandatory in the sense, this is recommended. Yes, it's a good to remember the narrator, Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman radiallahu anh. The hadith is لا تشربوا, do not drink, في آنية, in the utensil. Aniya is any container, whether it's a cup or a plate or whatever, الذهب والفضة, gold or silver. It is not permissible to drink from a gold or silver plate or cup or anything. And we talked about it before. Whether it's gold or silver, whether it's plated with gold or silver, all of that is not permissible. Unless there's a part of it is from silver, for example, for the purpose of protecting it, or so as the Prophet ﷺ did. So لا تشربوا في أنية الذهب والفضة ولا تأكلوا في صحافها, and do not eat in its صحافها, which is the container. It's the big plate that more than one person would sit and share and eat from it. And what is meant by that is not necessarily that specific type of container or plate, but the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this is the norm. So basically it means any plate. So do not drink in anything made of gold and silver, and do not eat in anything made of gold and silver. So eating and drinking, both are forbidden. So that's why وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا فِي صِحَافِهَا, referring to the gold and silver. فَإِنَّهَا لَهُمْ, then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the illah, or the wisdom, or the reason behind that. فَإِنَّهَا لَهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيا, it is for them in this dunya. For who? For the disbelievers in this dunya. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ, and for you in the hereafter. And for you in the hereafter. So that means if you use it in this dunya, that means you're committing haram and you're depriving yourself from having it in the hereafter. And in the hereafter is the believers will get that in the Jannah. فَإِنَّهَا لَهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَلَكُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ, and you for you in the hereafter. And the hadith is متفق عليه. So this is the hadith of Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman radiallahu anhuma, briefly, inshallah ta'ala, as we heard. So we'll stop here, inshallah. And if you have any quick questions, please go ahead, inshallah, before the Saleh. نعم تفضل. عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. What is it? Right, this is the part of the hadith. فَمَنْ اسْتَطَاعَ مِنْكُمْ أَنْ يُطِيلَ غُرَّتَهُ فَلْيَفْعَلْ. Since the Ummah will come on the Day of Judgment with the athar, with the traces of the wudu, shining or so, where the foot is and where the arm is, this extension of the hadith, it was said to be from the statement of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, not the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, whoever among you is able to bring his ghurra, or his place where he would wash, so that it's more light up in the Day of Judgment, then let him do so. Which is when you wash your face, make it a little bit over just the face. And when you wash your arm, make it a little bit more into the al-adud, what you call the forearm, the bicep, or the tricep, both. Not just the bicep, but both. Over the elbow. Over the elbow. But what do you call this? This. Forearm, arm. Already? Okay, so you go beyond the elbow to be on the arm, but not all the way to the neck, just a little bit. What's mandatory is the elbow is covered. So if you do more, this is from the sunnah, as Abu Hurairah said. And the same thing when you wash your foot, if you go up a little bit to the shin, this is good. Because it becomes more even shiny in the Day of Judgment. No, تفضل. Naam. The question is, if you have a baby infant and with diapers and with impurities and carrying him in the salah, or he climbs on your back and when you're making salah, having najasa, having impurities on one's body, one's clothing, the spot that you pray on, that is mandatory to remove. And the same thing with carrying najasa. So if someone, say for example, he's carrying a sample to go to the lab, for example. So you have a urine sample in his pocket, for example. It is not permissible to carry it while making salah. And the same thing to carry a baby with diapers and it's full, it's not permissible. Unless it's, which is the case with any najasa, unless it's for a short period of time and you put it away. So if, for example, you're making salah and your child comes in and climbs on you, then you put him down, that does not break the salah. So the short period of time, and you treat, of course, the child in a nice way, so that, like this, it does not break the salah that way. Unless you're carrying the whole time, this is different. The people of Jannah, what they eating, sahaf, actually the word sahaf is the plural of sahfa. Sahfa. The sahfa, the specific sahfa is the plate that is sufficient for 5 to eat from. So anything that is big enough for 5 people to eat from. So, but again, it's what is meant in the hadith is not necessarily the sahfa, but this is what the normal people would eat like this. So even if it's a small plate, it's still the same ruling applies, and not just specifically the big sahfa. But people in Jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, with all kinds of delight that they would, and the word sahfa is mentioned in the Quran with regards to the people of Jannah now. One more question, someone. نعم, there is a hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام إذا بلغ الماء القلتين لم ينجسه شيء. If the water reaches القلتين, قلة is the big that big thing made of clay where they put the water in, and it's specifically mainly it's from called Qilal Hajar, a specific place. It's well known the amount of water that they would carry. This was known to them at the time, and even has specific measures for people today to see. It's like something like a huge amount of water. No, not even much bigger than a bucket. It's like 600 pounds or something like that of water. The weight of it is big. So what's the two kullatin? So it's like when you have a big, we can get the exact measures. I always forget the exact measures of it. If it's less than that, this is where the rulings, the differences of opinions when it comes to that. But the hadith, some hadith bil ittirab, some ulama, they said the hadith has ittirab in it. So that's why they would not take this hadith. We'll discuss it inshallah. Qullatin with a qafis. Qulla is the again, what's the name for the qulla? Huh? It's not a barrel, is anyway. Jarra, مثل الجرة. What's in English? القلة. No. Jar, they call it jar. But the jarra is close to the kulla. But these are specific kullas. And the ones that are present now, it's not as big as Qilal Hajar. Even we have back home a kulla that big, small. But it has a, how the Zamzam thing looks like where they sell it? It kind of that shape, but a huge one. They put it in the streets for people to drink from. You uncover it, and you have a whole bunch of water inside.
Online it says 25 gallons. There's different variations.
Okay. For both. For one. So 50 gallons, which is no.
Question. Like we have in this world hopes, wishes, and we pray for Jannah. Would we have anything like that? Hopes and wishes and goals in Jannah?
Hopes and wishes in Jannah are fulfilled immediately. Immediately, when a person wishes for something in Jannah, it happens immediately. As a Bedouin came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said that he loves to farm. So would he, have something the like of that in Jannah? Prophet ﷺ smiled and he said that whatever a person wishes for, he gets it right away, immediately. So anything that even before a person says anything, it comes to him. Allah. Inshallah, if you guys don't mind, we'll make adhan and pray 2 rak'ah and then salah. Today's 8 o'clock, and some people even for Asr, they came late. So we'll pray it right after Sunnah prayer, inshallah. So maybe it's 8:05, 8:04. It's okay. So go ahead with the adhan.